Hi folks, John Cordisco back again with another great chess video for you. This is a game that was played on the 16th of October 2013 from the 7th Kings Tournament. This is round 9 between Italian-American Fabiano Caruana as white, rated 2779, and Wang as black, rated 2733. It's a very interesting game. I'm going to use the same thing that I said in my video prior to this. It's one of those situations where you make an error and then that error hits you and your thinking just goes to that error that you made, and you make another error and then another and then another, and eventually the game is lost. Now, I didn't want to mention at the end of this video there's going to be an interview between both players. Not going to say who won yet. I didn't want to do a spoiler like the last video. But once you go off tilt, as they say in poker, you go off tilt the rest of the game. Anyway, let's get to the game. Enough of my ramblings. It's going to be a Petrov defense. Wang is black. Fabiano Caruana is white. Knight f3. Knight f6, knight takes, d takes, knight f3. Now, I don't play the Petrov. It's very popular now, brought back by Vladimir Kramnik several years ago. I don't play it myself. I don't know a lot of the theory. A lot of you guys do, so I'm just going to go through the first few moves. Knight takes, knight c3, knight takes, d takes. Bishop b7, bishop b3, castles, queen to d2. Right now it's about an even game. Less than a tenth of a pawn, so that's even. Well, let's take a look here. They both got two bishops. White's ready to castle. Black's already castled. b6, going to fianchetto his bishop. Long castling, bishop b7. They're about even in development. Each has one minor piece not developed yet, and they're both castled. Pretty even game. Some might say boring. Knight d4, knight c6, knight f5. Now you're going to see a little knight maneuvering around here by white. Bishop moves. He wants to keep the bishop pair. Knight goes back to g3. I kind of like that the knight ended up on that side of the board, being that they're opposite side castled. That means it might be an exciting game. It might be a pawn storm, or a pawn race, I should say. Black will push his queenside pawns onto the white kingside or kingside castle position, and white will move his kingside pawns onto black's castled king. Knight to e7, knight h5. He wants that dark squared bishop. Knight. He's gonna have to give it up, so he moved the knight. But white didn't take it. He moved bishop to f4. Now, right now, this game is still dead even. We're going to see how it works out here. The only thing I can see here that I can think of is there's a lot of power coming down the d file. It's going to be tough for black to move any of these pawns. We're going to have to see how it works out for him. Bishop b5, h4. Now, to be honest with you, that move I don't understand. I know he's going to try his pawn storm. I thought for sure you would go g4 first to chase the knight to get his pawns up there. But he goes h4. And that is the computer's third choice. g6, bishop d3, g takes, bishop takes. Those of you that are wondering about bishop takes g2, after bishop takes, rook takes. White's got two pieces for a rook. We all know what's going to happen. If pawn takes, bishop takes, queen coming down here, it's doom for black. After g takes h5, bishop takes, queen f6. This is an interesting position here. It seems that black really hasn't had much of a chance yet for its queenside pawn push to go against the enemy king. And black seems to be on his heels. This bishop's on a really important diagonal here, and we all see, of course, why the bishop can't take that pawn, because after rook here, that's the end of that. But black's biting on granite here. That's a really good king position. And eventually this pawn will move, or the king will move over. Double heavy protection on white's king. I think black's on his heels a little bit here. Bishop takes, d takes. Bishop backs up to d3. Again, the bishop on b7 can't take the g2 pawn because of rook to g1 pitting against the king. So what to do, what to do? Now, I've got my Fritz 13 computer running off screen. It's about a half a point advantage for white, so it's the same as even. We have the same color bishops, so maybe even with black's mangled kingside pawns, maybe black can draw this. We'll have to see. King to g7. Now you'll see in the interview at the end of this video why Wang decided to move king to g7 instead of king to g8. He has an interesting explanation. Queen, e2, e4. Pushing those pawns right up. Bishop has to go to c4. Of course, you know why he can't take, because of the fact the rook, or this rook, will pin the bishop against the queen. Bishop c4, queen h6 check, king moves over. That's a pretty well guarded white king there on the queen side. Sometimes when you castle on the queen side, you're forced to move your king to the b1 square as far as white's concerned. It seems like a loss of tempo, but in this case he had to. But even still, you see that quite often in the middle game where he'll just take a move and put his king a little deeper into protection. Rook a to d8, a3, get a little loofed, as they say, for your king. f5, here come the pawns, but I think it's on the wrong side. Now, Wang is a world-class player, and who am I to question that? But any of us here, seriously, if we're black, I know he wants to protect the e4 pawn. I appreciate that. But those pawns should start to get rolling on the queen side if he wants any counterplay at all. f5, bishop b3. If rook had taken, rook takes, rook to d1, rook to d6. Excuse me, that was the suggestion on the computer. And of course we all see that if rook takes, queen takes. Or I should say pawn takes, depending if he wants to guard this pawn here. After bishop b3, king to g6. Interesting move. Using your king as what, a defending piece? That one I don't understand at all. If he had gone instead queen to g6, queen to c4, c5, and then g3. I kind of like that a little bit better for black if you want to know the truth of it. But I wasn't there to suggest it. Rook to h3. Now a rook lift. As Jennifer Shahade, former women's U.S. champion, calls it, a rover, a rook up and over. Again, if rook had taken, rook takes, rook d1, bishop a6. Kind of an interesting move because you know the queen can't take because of the fact that the rook becomes unguarded. After rook to h3, f4. I find this fascinating that Wang is using the pawn storm, so to speak, on the side where his king is. That's very unusual. But it's also very interesting. Rook takes, g4. Inviting the take in passant. Because after pawn takes, I think white's in extremely good shape there. Now we'll just stop and pause for a moment here. Either pause the video or kind of go over it like I am now in my mind. I went through this game, of course, several times earlier before the video. This is a very, very interesting position. Incredibly interesting. Normally with opposite side castling, you have a rush of pawns going towards each other's king. In this case, Wang decided to have a kingside pawn expansion while his king's castle on that side of the board. And his pawns now are very well advanced, as you can see here and here. And they're big threats, and I put them in red to make it the threats that they are. This bishop is nailing this pawn. This rook's going to come into play eventually as these pawns advance, and this queen's guarding this pawn. It shows that the position is dead even on the computer, and that's one of the dangers of using computer evaluations exclusively. I think right now, honestly and truly, and I'm just an average player at best, this position for black is a lot easier to play than white. I mean, in all fairness, what is this rook doing here? He can't move anywhere along here. What is he going to do? That rook is almost worthless. And on top of that, what is this bishop really doing? It shows it as even, but I'd rather play black. c5. If he had gone queen to g7 instead, then rook to h1, the rook comes back. After c5, he tries to bring the rook back into play. f3. Here we go. Now, I think worth considering would be queen to g7. Now that's a computer generated move. Now let's stop and look at this for a minute. Why is that? That one I don't understand, and I've gone over this game twice. Maybe some of you can pause the video here and maybe spend a little more time on this particular position than I did, and I've gone through it, and I really and truly don't know how that's better for black. I like the f3 move myself better. It's more forcing. And that's the other thing too. All of us know that, chess is a zero-sum game. The moves stand for themselves, the position stands for itself, but not always. A lot of it's psychological. You feel yourself under pressure. You feel you're being pushed back and you're being put under a lot of strain is when you make your errors. And that's what I think Wang is doing now. He's putting pressure on him. Queen goes to c4. Bishop d5. Puts the challenge right to the queen. Queen goes to a4. Now, it shows an advantage for white, but I'll tell you, I'm not so sure about that. Bishop takes, pawn takes. Shows a small advantage for white, but I really don't believe it. And this is where I'm critical of computers. Queen f4. Great move. What a multi-purpose move that is. Brings the queen right down where the action is. Wherever these pawns trying to queen. Right down towards white's king. Threatens this pawn and this pawn. In the end, guards this square. Beautiful. If he had taken, instead of that, if he had taken here, queen takes check, king to f7, king a2, and of course, that's an overwhelming position for white. Actually, the computer gives it a 2-point advantage. I don't think it's that high, but I'll tell you the truth. White should win this now. His king's tucked away in the perfect spot, and his rook and his queen are going to come out and eventually take the f and g pawns.
Right, check it. 3 aces.
Nice, but nicer.
Full house.
Ooh.
Nice.
Royal flush. I got nothing.
Oh, I was like, good gracious, ass both nations. What's going on? Get back to bed.
Feel young again. Centrum Silver.
After queen f5, the heat is on now. You're white in this particular situation. What do you do? What do you do? Tough. This is tough stuff. And I add a little side note. Caruana is very close to the 2800 mark. Now, he hit it once, I think for one day. And it was exactly 2800.0. So it was exactly 2800 rated. The new milestone, so to speak, for top elite world-class players. And here you are. And you're under this kind of pressure. And all those things are going through his mind, I have no doubt. And it's not, how do you not lose or how do you win? It depends how you look at it. I think he's thinking at this point, how do I not lose this? And he goes rook to e1. Now, he's concentrating, of course, the computer did that, on the e4 pawn, which, of course, is supporting the f3 pawn. Those are dangerous, extremely dangerous. Let's go back a move here. He went rook to e1. Now, this is where I think the computer is helpful. And they suggest queen to c6 check. They suggest queen to c6 check, rook here, and then queen checks. That's the suggestion on the computer. I think there might have been a better way to go. The king's out in the open. He's moved all his pawns in front of his king. Very well so far, but it exposes his king. Everything's double. Sword cuts both ways. To move those pawns, he had to expose his king, and that's where I think Caruana made his mistake. Rook to e1. If he had gone queen to c6 check, rook to d6, like we had said, king to h6, rook to e1, I think he would have been a little better off, frankly. After rook to e1, h takes g, rook takes e4, queen to f5, king to a2, move your king out of the back rank, king to h5. I think that's an important move, the king to h5. It puts his king in a really good spot safety-wise. Now the white queen is no checks. There's no attack, at least immediate attack, on a first move attack on the black king. He goes rook back again. h6. Those are wondering why I didn't take the pawn. After queen takes a7, queen to d7, queen takes, and black is doomed. Those free pawns aren't so free. Sometimes you leave the enemy pawn there for one simple reason. He's a shield, kind of a traitor in a way. Queen takes a7, g3. Now's the mistake of all mistakes. Probably should play queen here. Get his queen right in the action. He takes. Huge mistake. Queen to g7. Pawn takes. Rook to e5. Queen takes. Queen takes. King to g4. Queen to e4 check. King to g3. Queen checks. King to h3. f5. g3. g6. h3. And so on, and so on, and so on. You get the idea. He took the pawn. f2. Only one move. Rook to f1. Now this is one of those rare occasions where material means zero. Technically right now white's up 2 pawns, but he's almost 2 pawns down in score. Here comes the black king. Fascinating stuff. He moved all his pawns on his front of his king for the attack. Now he's got a pawn on f2 on the 7th rank. White's king is very well tucked away, but that's not his problem. Now the king, even with queens on the board, becomes a very good attacking piece. Fascinating stuff. Now, this is where Caruana stumbles again. I think he went off tilt. He made a couple of bad moves, and that's what I talked about at the beginning of the video, where you make a mistake, get a little off tilt, and make another maybe small error, and then another small error, and these errors start adding up, and your position becomes untenable. I think that's what's happening now. Now this is on move 38 for black. I'm not sure if there was any time pressure. I don't recall in the game, because I remember watching it, but I don't remember if he was in real time pressure. He plays queen to g7. Check. To me, that's a lost tempo, because the king wants to get in here anyway, either through here or through here to here, and then here or here. He wants to get in. And this queen's doing a marvelous job of guarding this file. King goes to f3, just where he wanted to go anyway. So that was a completely wasted tempo. And when you're down this far, every single move counts, even in the beginning of the game, but now especially. g4. Now, if queen had taken, king to g2, queen to c1, and I think pretty much that dooms white. The queen's going to come in to here to exert pressure, and then come back to here. Got to remember also, there's a rook here on this file. It's curtains for white. Queen to f4 for black. Queen to b7, check. King just goes to e2. Either side, didn't matter. Rook to b1. If you're curious on queen takes b6, king takes f1, queen takes d8, king to e1, and black gets another queen. After rook to b1, rook to d3, guarding around his king, so that f-pawn can queen. If he had queen instead, rook takes, queen takes. It would have made it a little bit harder for black, but still would have won easily. And now, white miscues again. Oddly enough, the mistake was queen takes b6. It's a poison pawn. But that's the best move the computer can come up with. That's how bad white's position is. He plays queen to g2. Huge mistake. Rook to d1. Now there's nowhere to attack the black king. Rook takes, king takes, queen f1 check, king to d2, g5, h takes, queen to g3, queen to b5. I'm not going to go through all the scenarios with you because it's really pointless. Queen to d3. And this is where Fabiano Caruana, top 5 in the world, world-class elite player, Italian-American, resigned. And I think this is another example, just like the video previous to this. For those of you that follow any of my videos, I number them in order as I put them on YouTube. This one will be video 127, but 126 had a similar theme, even though the game was much different. That when you miscue and you make a mistake, whether it be pressure from the position or pressure from time, you turn around and make another mistake on top of that, and then another one, and then another one. And that's what happens when you go off tilt. So what happens to all of us, even the average players like me, and everybody that watches the videos here, and the world-class elite players, because when it comes down to it, we're all human. Anyway, folks, that's the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you to all my new subscribers, several dozen. I appreciate it, and all the hundreds and thousands of views that I've received on my videos in the last month. I personally appreciate it. Take care, folks. Bye-bye.
Is it a bird? Is it a plane? No, it's Superman. sir, kids, a real flying Superman that can be yours. Looks just like Superman himself. He's made of tough blue plastic and has a bright red cape that fits on his shoulders. With your flying Superman, you get a powerful launcher to send him sky high, zooming through space just like Superman does in his adventures. Now, you'll want to be one of the first to have your own flying Superman, so listen carefully, because here's all you do to get yours. Send one box top from Kellogg's Corn Flakes and just 10 cents. That's one box top and just 10 cents to Flying Superman, Box 330, Battle Creek, Michigan. Or use the handy order blank right on the Kellogg's Corn Flakes package. Get your Flying Superman from Kellogg's now.